Welcome everybody to our Lifestyle as Medicine lecture series with Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. I am Dr. Ted Barnett. I am the president and founder of Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, and we run a monthly Lifestyle as Medicine lecture series, and we're very excited tonight to be able to bring you Jeff Novick, who is world-renowned in many, many ways. Jeff is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and chef, and has a unique talent for imparting complex information in an easily digestible form. His lectures have educated and empowered audiences worldwide to live healthier lives. Jeff served as the director of nutrition at the Pritikin Longevity Center in Florida and as vice president of health promotion for Executive Health Exams International. He was the director of nutrition for the Meals for Health Community Project, which helped empower low-income families to achieve optimal health. He also worked with Whole Foods Market on the development of their Wellness Club program, their healthy eating initiatives, and their food rating system. Jeff created and taught the Nutrition Education Initiative, a whole food, plant-based preventive medicine curriculum for medical doctors, residents, and students. In recognition, Indiana's governor awarded him the Indiana State Public Health Excellence in Health Science Award. Currently, he can be found working with the McDougall program, where he has lectured for the past 15 years. When not lecturing, he is out enjoying nature, music, art, and poetry with his wife, Linda Eve. So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Jeff Novick and a lesson in label reading, how to choose the healthiest foods.
Well, thank you for inviting me to do the lecture and as part of your Lifestyle Medicine series, and especially to speak on my favorite topic, as you know, label reading. So a lesson in label reading, how to choose the healthiest foods. So about exactly a week ago, when there was a study that came out in the news, and I'm sure many of you heard about it. And when I read it, it made me really think about this lecture and the importance of it and how glad I was doing this. And some of you may have seen this. 9,700 adults were surveyed and they filled out food intake forms. They were asked to rate their diet, whether they thought it was poor, fair, good, very good, or excellent. 89% of them rated their diet as very good, not surprising. Then when their diets were analyzed based on the food intake forms, all of their diets scored poor. Now, I wasn't surprised because there's been research and data like this saying the same thing for a couple decades. But this demonstrates what a huge disconnect there is between what we think is healthy eating and what is healthy eating. And not only that, this is true about the same with the products that we buy. And this study came out 2.5 years ago, 2019. And this one, they didn't ask you what you ate because people don't, they sometimes might over or underestimate. So they looked at 230,000 food and beverage products that were sold in the USA over 3 years. So this is what we were actually buying. And what they found out was 71% of the products were ultra processed. And when they looked at the top 25 manufacturers by sales volume, 86% of the products were classified as ultra processed. This is incredible that 71 to 86% of the products we're buying can be called ultra processed. And just to clarify, from my perspective, ultra processed is the new hip word for junk food. I mean, it's food that rich in calories, poor in nutrients, and usually loaded with fat, oil, salt, sugar, and refined grains. Junk food, or as those of you who know me know what I call it calorie rich and processed. CRAP, crap. So we'll be talking about crap a lot tonight. Now, I think these products that we're going to be talking about have a lot to do with the disconnect. It doesn't happen by accident. And I know that probably most of you, like the people in the study, probably actually try to find healthy products. The American Heart Association and another poll survey, there were a couple polls in the last 2 years, 2.5 years. 95% of shoppers look for healthy options. And the place they look is the nutrition facts label and ingredient list. which is interesting because that's where they're told to look, where they can find the best information and the most helpful. But what's interesting is 82% of them felt tricked by the nutrition facts label. 53% of them feel like the labels are misleading. And 11%, I think these were the ones who'd see my lecture, found the labels to be completely untrustworthy. So here's what we're going to do today, because I think this is just the perfect time to do it. What I'm going to do is first set some guidelines for reading labels. How do we decide what's healthy and what isn't? Then we're going to evaluate some products together. I'll give you a couple tricks of the trade, and we'll go on a virtual shopping tour. I've scanned in a dozen or so products, and we'll actually go shopping a little later. In addition, I've provided or will provide with you summary handouts. There's 3 handouts that go with this lecture that most of you probably got in the email today, or if not, you'll get it at the end of the lecture. But either way, don't worry, they're summary handouts. One of them is a practice sheet for you to actually run through. One of them is a summary of the guidelines, and there's one that's a grid, if everybody can see that. So we'll be using that one, but don't worry about it, because I'm going to go over it in the lecture, show it to you, show you how to use it. It's really simple. So whether you have them or not, you're all going to be fine. It's going to be great. Okay, now imagine you went shopping and you went to the produce section, bought your fruits and vegetables, and then we're going through the rest of the store, and you saw this product. You were looking for a cracker. And look, this one says organic. It says no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives, non-GMO, USDA organic, and vegan. What would you think? I mean, it sounds pretty good. Well, I'm not going to tell you whether it's good or not. That defeats the purpose of my class. What I'm going to do is teach you a simple system that I developed years ago, and we'll practice it. And then we'll come back here and we'll evaluate this together. Now, the system is so simple. There's only like 4 steps to it, and it takes less than 10 seconds. And when you get really good at it, it'll probably be even less than 5 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to set some guidelines. And remember that guidelines are guides to help you make better choices. They're not carved in stone. It's not black and white. They're just guidelines. And some of you may disagree with me. You may think I'm a little too strict, or maybe you think I'm not strict enough. That's up to you. You're welcome to adjust them. But I'm going to show you my guidelines, and we're going to set them for fat. We're going to set them for refined carbohydrates and grains. We're going to set them for added sugars and sweeteners and sodium. And as we just saw, this is basically the definition of ultra high processed food or junk food, or what I call crap, okay? So we just consume way too much of these, and we have to set guidelines. So they're not rules. However, there are 2 rules in this class, and you have to know these rules, and they're not written down anywhere. And the reason is, if you don't know these rules, the guidelines never work. So rule number 1 says, the most important one, never ever believe anything on the front of any package, ever, no exception. Rule number 2 says, if you're ever in doubt, reread rule number 1. Just kidding. Rule number 2 says, always read the nutrition facts label and the ingredient list. So to sum up, we're going to ignore that. We're going to read this, the nutrition facts label and the ingredient list. And I'm going to show you what things we're looking for. Okay, now here's some more information just on what we'll be doing today. Turns out there's a new label. Many of you probably know this already, but in case you don't, there's a new label. It was official as of January 2021. So it should be on almost every product. And this is the original label that some of you may be more familiar with. It's been around for a couple of decades. Now, there's been 2 changes that really matter to me. And if you know my guidelines or seen my classes before, then you'll be familiar with these. So let me just go over them so we got that covered. In the old label, they used to list calories from fat. And that was important to me because that was part of my guidelines. We would look for that. But I guess on the new label, they decided fat's not that important anymore, or not enough concern to be kept on the label. But so they got rid of it. So you can't find it on the new label anywhere. But what they did leave is total fat in grams. And that will work for us because there's a relationship between this and this. And I think it's actually made things easier. So the second thing, and the good news is, the old label used to say just total sugars. It just told you the amount of total sugars, those that occurred naturally in food and those that were added. But the problem with that is I'm mostly concerned with the ones that are added, and they didn't tell you the difference, so we couldn't tell. But they now do. They now list added sugars, separated out from the total sugars. And it's in grams too. Now, here's the bad news. As you can see by looking at the label, there's a lot of numbers, there's percentages, and so this class has a little bit of math. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. I've made the math so simple, it's going to be painless. And in fact, the cheat sheet has all the math calculations on it. So if you don't like math, you won't even have to do the math. It's all done for you. But there is a little math. Do not be scared. I'll make it easy. And when we get through it, we're going shopping, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So fat. So now I'm not giving a fat lecture, and I'm not going to give a lecture on sodium, and I'm not giving a lecture on sugar. But I am going to take a few minutes to tell you where my guideline and where I got it from, because I want you to know a little bit about how I'm thinking and what I did. Because like I said, you may disagree, and that's fine. But you see, I don't want, somebody to come up to you and say, hey, would you like to eat some of this? And you go, no. And they go, why not? And you say, well, Jeff said so. I don't want you to do that. I want you to be able to say, hey, look what I've learned, all right? And so, and of course, you may disagree. So how much fat do we really need? We only need 3% of our calories to come from what are called essential fatty acids. And they're called essential because we can't make them. As we all know, we're pretty good at making fat. We've proven that. But there's one type of fat we don't make, and those are called, and that's why they're called essential fatty acids, because it's essential that we get them in the food. And you don't have to eat fish or walnuts or flax every day, all day to get it. It actually occurs naturally in the foods and in all plant foods. In fact, plant foods are the original source of essential fats. So if you eat a whole natural food diet, get in enough calories, minimize junk, then you're probably going to be fine. Now, the average total fat intake in the United States right now is about 35%, which I think is pretty high. My recommendation, and not only is it 35, there are recommendations now as high as 45. I've seen them go as high as 65 now. So it's gotten a little crazy. Now, recommendations, if you don't know me, let me tell you, I'm in the low-fat camp. I've had the honor and pleasure of working with many of the luminaries over the years on the low-fat diet, and that, including Dr. McDougall, the Pritikin family, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Ornish, Dr. Barnard. And I think we have a good case for the lower-fat diet. Now, if you ask most of them, they'll probably tell you 10%, maybe 8%, maybe 12%, depends what day. What I like to say is it's under 15%. And the reason I say that is some people don't realize that there's some foods we eat regularly that actually are over 10%. Like I'm sure many of you love oatmeal and eat oatmeal. Well, oatmeal is 16% fat. And some of you might love quinoa and eat quinoa every day. Well, that's 15% fat. And I think we all love garbanzo beans. Well, that's 14% fat. So it's not that that's bad. It's just that the 10% is, just so you know, you might be a little over or under. But now I think there's a good reason. There's several reasons why we should limit fat. First off, It's the largest contributor to excess caloric intake. When you look at our calorie intake over the last few decades, fat has contributed the most to the excess calories we consume. Fat is the highest in calorie density, which leads to passive overconsumption. So lowering fat lowers calorie density. Also, by lowering total fat, we also lower unhealthy fat. So it helps do that. So I think there's a lot of good reason. So what's my recommendation? Well, in general, for the day, this is the camp I'm in, all right? So that's what I think. But this class isn't about your day. This class is about these packaged products. The most important thing to know is I don't think these should make up a large part of your diet. You don't want to overdo them. And if they don't make up a large part of your diet and you include a few, I can give you a little leeway. And when it comes to fat and packaged products, my leeway is 20%. So even though I'll let you go up to 20% on these, and the rest of your diet is all the healthy, whole natural food that's lower in fat, you'll be fine. So now we have to do a little bit of math, and I'm going to make it easy. Now, I'm sure most of you know what's called calorie math. A gram of fat is 9 calories, a gram of carb is 4, a gram of protein is 4. But what you may not know are those aren't carved in stone. There's actually a range of those, and it can be pretty wide. So these are just numbers they came up with. So I thought being there's a range and they use averages, so can I, to make things easier. So I'm going to round off to 10 because when I tell people we're going to do math using 9, they don't always look happy. But when I tell them we're going to do 10, they're like, oh, that's easy because it's easier math. So remember, per serving, no more than 20% of the calories are going to come from fat. So if I pick this box up and it says 100 calories, what's the most calories from fat I want to see? 20, that's 20% of 100. But remember, they took calories from fat off the label. It's not there anymore. But I remember this math. So I know if I just divide that by 10 to make it easy, I get to 2 grams of fat. So if I limit fat to 2 grams of fat for every 100 calories, I'm limiting it to 20% of calories, all right? So if I picked up a product and it was 200 calories, 20% would be 40, divide by 10, and it'd be 4 grams. I wouldn't want to see more than 4 grams if it was 200 calories. If it was 300 calories, it would be 60. That's 20% of 300. Got to get to grams, so I divide by 10 and it's 6. Now, I know I probably made some of you nervous with all this math, but don't worry because you're gonna have a handout and it's called the label reading chart. And for total, it's got calories, total fat, grams of fat. What I do here is I list calorie values from 25 to 500. So I list the values for every 25 calories. And over here, I give you the equivalent grams of fat to stay under 20%. So like we just saw, if you pick up something and it says 100 calories, just go right across and it says, make sure the grams of fat are no more than 2. If you pick up something that's 300 calories, just make sure the grams of fat are not more than 6. Now I stopped it at 500 calories because just my perspective, I got a little rule. If a product has more than 500 calories per serving, put it back. That's a lot of calories. Okay, so you can see how easy the chart is. And what you all should do tonight after the lecture is take out your phone and take a picture of this and keep it on your phone. So whenever you're out, whether you're in the health food store or the grocery store, if you want to look at a product, you could easily refer to this. But there you are in the store and you go to pull your phone out and the battery's dead. So now what do? Well, I love math. And when you love math, there's a lot of math tricks. So I'm going to teach you a math trick, how you could take any calorie value and get to 2% like that. So let's say the calories were 250 and you've got to get to 2%. Now, if you're good at math, just bear with me. What you want to do is take 1%, and 1% is just done by moving the decimal place, which would be there, but we don't put it there, 2 places. So 1% of 250 is 2.5. Very simple. Double that, and you get 5. So 2% of 250 calories is 5 grams. Very simple. Then you go down the aisle, pick something else up, it's 150 calories. Well, just take 1%, which is 1.5. Move the decimal 2 places. Okay, then double it, and it's 3. So 2% of 150 calories is 3 grams. There you go. Got you covered. So let's practice it. Let's look at this label and just see how it's doing on fat. So it's got 230 calories. You can take this out and look, and there's no 230, but you can round up or down to 225 or 250. And what you will see is 4.5 grams or 5 grams. And again, you could use either one. It's not, as you're going to see, it's not going to matter. Okay, so let's say we're not going to go more than 5 grams, all right? Well, it's got 8 grams of fat. So based on my guidelines, that's pretty high. That's pretty high. So that's how easy it is. Now, if you did the math, 230 times 1% is 2.3, times 2 is 4.6. So we're the same numbers. We can round it off to 4.5. And as again, this is too high. Now, we also want to watch the type of fat because there are unhealthy fats and we want to limit them. So we're going to check the ingredient list and we're going to avoid saturated animal fat, which is like lard, butter, chicken fat, dairy, and cheese. And dairy products contribute quite a bit of saturated fat. So you really got to watch for it. Saturated vegetable fat, which is the tropical oils, coconut oil, palm kernel oil. These are extremely high in saturated fat, and that still matters. Man-made saturated vegetable fat, which is mostly out of the food supply, but you'll still see it occasionally, and that's partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, and you'll see it listed as margarine and shortening. And of course, oil. Oil, I think there's some good reasons to limit oil. First off, it's the largest contributor to excess caloric intake. Again, it's what drove up all the fat. Limiting it lowers calorie density, reducing the likelihood we'll passively overconsume calories, and it helps limit unhealthy fat. So there's a lot of good reasons. And people often think these are just straight up health foods, and it's not true. I mean, sesame oil, people love that for the flavor. That's 15% saturated fat. Olive oil, the superfood, is 14% saturated fat. And avocado oil, the new popular oil, is 12% saturated fat. So it's not that these are not without concerns, and they're extremely calorie dense. Okay, that's it for fat. We're going to limit the calories from fat to 20%, and we're going to do that by limiting the grams of fat to 2%. We're going to read the ingredients, make sure there's no unhealthy fat. Let's do carbohydrates. This is an easy one, no math. Carbohydrates are the preferred source of fuel for the body. Carbs aren't the problem. The problem is refined processed carbs that have little to no fiber, vitamins, or nutrients. Average intake of unrefined whole grains in the United States, I just checked to double check this number because it always shocks me, is less than 1 serving per day. That's sad. Now, the nutrition facts label, when we look at it, only lists total carb. But I'm not concerned about the total carb. I'm concerned whether they've added refined carbs or whole grains. So where can I go to see what they've added? I go to the ingredient list. And what I want to look for are whole grains. I want all the grains and cereals to be whole grains. So the FDA has approved 6 words that act as qualifiers to indicate whole grains. The first one is whole, like whole wheat, then rolled, like rolled oats, stone ground, like stone ground corn, cracked, like cracked wheat, or sprouted, like sprouted wheat, and also brown rice. These 6 words or qualifiers represent whole grains. Now, there's a lot of other words that you see a lot of, and they're just refined grains like wheat, white, durum, semolina, bleached, unbleached, enriched, ancient, heirloom. If these don't have one of these qualifiers in front of their words, they're just white flour. So if you pick up a box and it says wheat crackers, and you look at the ingredients, and the first ingredient is wheat flour, guess what that is? It's refined flours. But if it says whole wheat, then that's a whole grain. So if something says now made with organic unbleached semolina, and that's it, refined grain. But it says now made with organic unbleached stone ground semolina, that's a whole grain. Okay, that's it for carbohydrates. Read the ingredients and make sure all the cereals and grains are whole. Okay, let's do sugar. Sugar is the preferred source of fuel for the body, one of the primary fuel sources for the brain. Sugars occur naturally in many foods like beets and corn and fruit. I'm not worried about that because those occur naturally and they're part of the package, and there's fiber and the water. It's a great pack. I'm not worried about those. What I am worried about are all the free concentrated sugars that make up that are in our food supply, like sugar, brown sugar, raw sugar, honey, molasses, barley malt, fructose, corn syrup, date syrup. There's so many of them. And today there's big arguments about which one's better. Is brown sugar better than raw sugar? Is molasses better than corn syrup? Or is barley malt better than date syrup? All these. That's the distraction. Our concern from a health perspective is not which one you're using. The concern is right now in America, sugars account for 60 pounds per person a year, 288 calories a day, 18 teaspoons a day. So if you switch from sugar to brown sugar and you're still eating 18 teaspoons a day, that's a concern. So the real issue is not which one you're using. If you have a preference, that's fine, but the amount, we have to limit it. So what are some recommended limits out there? World Health Organization, Public Health England, and the American Heart Association prudent upper limit all have guidelines. And if you look at them closely and do the math in them, it comes to about 5 to 10% of calories. So that's great. We have some pretty good guidelines out there. So for the daily diet, like with fat, I think we should do the best we can. I think we should aim for 5% of our total calories, less than 5% or less of our total calories to be added sugar. And by the way, at that level, it doesn't matter which one you use either, because I don't know of any harm at that very low level. But again, this lecture is about packaged products. So like with fat, I'm going to give you a little leeway on the packaged products, as long as they're not making up a big part of your diet. And my leeway is 10% of total calories. Okay, but let's get back to sugar math. So 1 gram of sugar is said to be 4 calories. But again, that's a range, and it's a bigger range than for fat. So I'm going to just round off to 5 to make the math easy. Now, if also you remember, when we looked at the new label, they don't say calories from sugar, they say grams of sugar, of added sugar. Okay, so per serving, no more than 10% of calories. So if we pick up a product like this and it's got 100 calories, 10% would be no more than calories from sugar, not on the label. So we divide by 5 and we get to 2. If it was 200 calories, 10% is 20 calories from sugar, not on the label. So we divide by 5 and we'll limit it to 4. And 300 calories, 30 calories from sugar, 6 grams of sugar. Now I know there's more math, but don't worry. On the label reading chart on the far right is added sugars. Same thing, you just pick your calorie value like 200, you slide across, and added sugar should be no more than 4 grams. Now, I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but due to the math and everything, these numbers are the same as these numbers. So if you want a little trick and you're confident, just lop this one off. And when you do grams of fat, just understand that number is for sugar too. It's the same limit. So that'll even make it easier. Okay, take a picture of it, put it on your phone, but you get to the grocery store, your phone's dead. So what do? You do the 1%. I'll just run through it quickly, but you take you do the 2%, and you do the 2% by taking 1% and then doubling it. So 250 would be 2.5 and then 5, all right? So 250 times 2% is 5 grams. If it was 150 calories, 1% is 1.5, double it is 3.0. So 2% of 150 is 3 grams. So let's see how it works out on the new label. There's 250 calories. So look on your cheat sheet or your label reading card and look up 230. You're not going to find it. You're going to have 225 or 250. And the number is going to be 4.5 grams or 5 grams. Either one works, as you'll see, because when we look here, there's 10 grams of added sugar. So this thing was pretty high in fat over my guidelines and pretty high in sugar. Okay, let's keep going. Last one we're going to do, and then we'll get to some of the tricks and also to the shopping. Sodium, daily required amount. It's so low. It's so low in ideal situations. There's no RDA. There's no DRI. What they've come up with is what's called the recommended safe minimum, and they set it at 500 milligrams a day. And you don't have to worry about that because that occurs naturally in food. So if you're eating enough calories from whole natural foods, whole natural plant foods, limiting the junk with a variety of foods, you're going to easily get that in. Probably get anywhere from 450 to 550, 600 easily. The problem today is the average intake in the United States is 4,000 milligrams. So what are the recommended ranges? Well, from the American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology, the USDA, and a few others, it's no more than 2,300 milligrams a day. They call it now a CDRR. It used to be called a UL. That means chronic disease risk reduction. So if you want to reduce your risk for chronic diseases related to sodium, keep your sodium under 2,300 milligrams or less. They also come out with what's called an adequate intake and say 1,500 milligrams or less would be the safest. Now, to put that in perspective, a teaspoon of salt is about 2,200 milligrams and maybe 23, 22, depending on how level your teaspoon is. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's Celtic salt, sea salt, Himalayan, black French, or any of these gourmet salts. That's not the issue. It's not which one you're using. The issue is the total amount. Now, let me just put this in perspective for a minute. Let's say you're following a whole natural plant food diet. You're getting in enough calories, eating a variety of foods, limiting junk, right? So you got 500 milligrams. You want to be as safe as possible, so you want to limit your total to 1,500. A teaspoon's 22. So how much can you add to stay under 1,500? How much can you add to this to stay under 1,500? And it's about a half a teaspoon. This would be just over 3/4 of a teaspoon. So realize there's not a lot of recommendations for higher amounts than that. So again, just a reminder, it's not which one, it's that you're limiting it. So what's a healthy guideline? I'm going to use the range again. I'm going to say that 1,500 to 2,300 milligrams. That's what we'll use. Now, here's why this is so important. This is where the salt's coming from in our diet based on the 4,000 milligrams. 5% of it is added while cooking, so that's about 200 milligrams. 6% is added while eating, that's about 240 milligrams. That's all we average putting on. 12% comes from natural sources, what occurred in the food. There's around 500, 480 in this example. But here's the issue. 77% or more comes from processed and prepared food, packaged foods. That's over 3,000. So this is the real issue. I mean, how do you get under 2,300 or 1,500 if you don't take care of this? Because if you just take what's in the diet and you just leave these two where they are, that's 480, 200, 680, it's like 920. You're not even up to 1,500 yet. So this isn't the issue. This is the issue. We got to come up with a way to limit sodium from these processed foods. So here's what I did. So probably most Americans don't need to eat more than 2,300 calories a day. That's also the maximum sodium per day we should be having. You see the ratio between the two? 1-to-1. So theoretically, if I limit my sodium per milligram to the calories per serving, theoretically, I shouldn't go over 2,300, especially when I'm keeping packaged products to a limit. They're not going to make up my whole diet. So per serving, if you pick up something and you look at the sodium, and it says 100 calories, what's the most sodium? 100 milligrams of sodium. What if it was 324 calories? The most sodium would be 324. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, yeah, but what if I eat 3,000 calories? I do to 1-to-1. And I said, well, that's not how this is set up, because I don't want you living and getting all 3,000 calories out of packaged products. But yes, if you did it that way, then you'd be at 3,000. These shouldn't even make up half your diet. So if you're at 3,000 calories and these make up half your diet, 1,500 came from packaged products. Due to 1-to-1, you're at 1,500 milligrams. So I got you covered. But you have to help me. You can't live out of these packaged products. You have to watch the sodium. Okay, now I make an exception for condiments up to 4 times the calories. And the reason is they're condiments. We should use them as condiments. So if a hot sauce has like 10 calories and the sodium is 40, I'm not that worried, because that'd be a heck of a lot of hot sauce to get up to 1,500 milligrams. And I just don't think several people were going to do that. So I gave this lecture once, and somebody stood up and raised a hand. They said, I have a comment. And they said, where I come from, hot sauce is not a condiment. I said, well, in that case, you have to use the 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, let's look at a product. We've done enough math and numbers. Let's see how this plays out. And all we're going to look at right now is sodium. So we're going to keep it easy. I think everybody's heard of Near East. If not, it's a health food company, and they specialize in grains. And I have 2 of them here. One's the original, one's wild mushroom and herb. So what does rule number 1 say? The most important thing, never ever believe anything on the front of any package ever. Great, turn it over and let's see. We need 2 numbers. For sodium, we need calories, 220. So the sodium should be no more than 220. And what do we see? We see 0. So that's great. Anybody want to guess what's in the same size serving of wild mushroom and herb? Now remember, this is a health food, so, well, how about 570 milligrams, almost 600 per serving? And not everybody eats a serving. I mean, what if you eat 2 or 3 servings? What happened to your sodium intake? You're over to 50, you're up to 1,800 milligrams. So you got to be careful. And let me tell you, there's a lot more sodium in the food than you may be prepared. There's so much sodium in the food that it may shock you once you use this ratio. Now, even though it's an easy number, 1-to-1 ratio, I included sodium in the chart. All right. And just so you know, when you pick up a label, when you pick up a product and you look at the label, the grams of fat will be the first thing we see, the total fat, then the sodium, and then the added sugar. So this goes right in order. All right. So now we're going to evaluate products. But before we do, we have to do just a little review. And what's rule number 1? Never, ever believe anything on the front of any package ever. Okay, now here's how you take everything I've given you and you put it together in a simple system where 4 steps, and it'll take you less than 10 seconds. Here's all you do. First, go look at the nutrition facts label. Check the calories from fat are no more than 20% of the calories. How do we do that? We limit the grams of fat to 2% on your cheat sheet. Sodium, 1-to-1 ratio, sodium to calories. Next, check the added sugars, no more than 10% of calories. And how do we do that? We limit the grams of sugars to no more than 2% of calories. Then we check the ingredients, and we're going to avoid unhealthy fats, and we're going to choose whole grains. Make sure all the grains and cereals are whole grains. Now let's look at this. This is the new nutrition facts label, and they all look something like this, and they're all called nutrition facts. That's the first lie there, but we'll let that go. Next, it says serving size 4 crackers. And it's good to look at this because between these thick black line, all these numbers are per serving. So if you eat 8 crackers, what happens to these numbers? They double. Then up here, it says about 12 servings per container. And that's important. You have to know how many servings are in the whole box, just in case you eat the whole box. You still have to do the math. Okay, next is calories, 70. So that's in my system. You need to know that. And then there's fat in grams. So that's important. And then as far as the rest of these goes, if you're limiting fat, total fat to 20% or less, and you're checking the ingredients to make sure there's none unhealthy fats, we've taken care of these. Next is cholesterol, which is not in the food we recommend or I recommend. And then sodium. So we got calories, fat, sodium. I'm not counting carbs. I'm going to check the ingredients with you and make sure they're all whole grain. Dietary fiber comes along with the ride. If you've done all this right, then the fiber will be there. Total sugars, I'm not counting. I just want to see added sugars. So there's something else. And again, if you're eating enough calories from a whole natural plant food diet, minimizing the junk and a little bit of variety, this is not an issue. Now you see these numbers down here and the percentages and all this information. I would have to take 45 minutes to explain to you where that comes from. And then I have to tell you, I don't think it's helpful at all. I think it's misleading. And you see these percentages here, they're based on all this. So I think these are unhelpful and a little bit misleading, as you're going to see. Let me ask you. See, and actually, if you go to the website the FDA puts up on how to read a label, they tell you this is one of the quick ways you could see how healthy a product is. So let's do that. Let's just look here. Okay, total fat, 4%. Does that sound like a lot? 4%? Nope, doesn't sound like a lot. Sodium, 7%. Does that sound like a lot? 7% of what? But they're not telling me, but I don't know. Doesn't sound like a lot to me. So you might think this is low fat and low sodium. Okay, let's give it the check. Let's use the system. The guidelines, take the calories, right? For fat, look it up on the sheet. You'll use 75 calories, round up to 75 and look at the number. I'll do the math. 70 calories times 1% is 0.7. Double it is 1.4, is 0.7. Double it is 1.4. Sodium should be no more than 70. And added sugar should be no more than 1.4. So let's look at the label. It's got 3 grams of fat. That's twice what I'm recommending. And my level has a leeway in it. So that's over 40% fat. So I don't think this 4% is very helpful. Sodium, 160. That's almost 2.5 times the ratio that I showed you that would be helpful. So I don't think this 7% is helpful either. Added sugars, it passes on that. So it's pretty high in fat. It's pretty high in salt. We don't need to go further, but let's read the ingredients. The first ingredient is organic wheat flour. What's that? That's refined flour. It didn't say whole wheat. Then we've got sunflower oils and or organic safflower oil or palm oil. That's an issue. Palm oil is high in saturated fat. And then it also has cane sugar and invert syrup. So this is white flour, oil, and sugar. This is like the definition of ultra high processed junk food. Okay, so what do we think? Rejected. Clearly, this didn't even come close. You want to see what product this is? Here it is. The one that said organic, the one that said no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives, the one that says non-GMO, USDA, and vegan, doesn't make it. Have you been fooled? You bet. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of tricks, just 2 or 3 of them, and then we're going to go shopping. I am not recommending these foods. They're just examples to point out some things that happen. And maybe you've been fooled by these. Excuse me 1 second. Put a little light on. So I have the natural light, but the sun's going down. Okay, Progresso. Everybody knows Progresso. They make soups. 99% fat-free. Well, you don't need a calculator for this. If something says 99% fat-free, how much fat should be in it? 1%. But what does rule number 1 tell you? Never, ever. Okay, you got it. So it's got 80 calories. If there's really 1% fat, there should be 0.8 calories from fat. That's 1%. I'll do the math. And what do we see? Total fat, there is no calories from fat. So they gave us 1.5 grams. So I'll do the math. Times 10 is 15 calories from fat. Divide by 80 is 19% calories from fat. But wait a minute, it said 99% fat-free, but it's 19% calories from fat. It's 19 times more than it says. I hope that bothers you. Now, you want to see how they do it? Watch carefully. Take the weight of the fat, 1.5. Take the weight of the product, 237. Divide the weight of the fat by the weight of the product. You get 1% fat by weight, or 99% fat-free by weight. But realize every health guideline that we've ever given to the public has always asked you to watch fat as a percent of calories. Every packaged product, whether it's soup, cookies, milk, donuts, hot dogs, whatever it is that lists percent fat, does it by weight. They're two different systems, and there's like no relationship, direct relationship between them. So we're looking for one thing and they're giving us something else. So they use a different math system. They use percentage of fat by weight. And I was looking at, this happens in the plant-based vegan world. I just saw Silk Milk came out with a 2% milk. It's not 2% calories from fat, it's weight of fat. It's a different system. So anyway, if you're buying something that says 99% fat-free and you find out it's 19% fat, I hope that bothers you. But what if you're buying something that says no fat at all, and you find out it's almost all, if not all fat? Would that bother you? Well, let me show it to you. I call this the Pam scam. And when you look at the label, and the label here, what you're looking at, this is called a smart label. You scan the QR code and that pops up in on your phone. And it says no calories, no fat, no sat fat, no trans fat, no cholesterol, no sodium, no carb, no protein, nothing. But I had to pay $3.49 to get this, but the label says that there's nothing in it. So, and then I look on the smart label, and on the can, it often says for fat-free cooking. So it says for fat-free cooking, it says 0 fat. But when you look at the ingredients, the first ingredient is avocado oil. Now, last I checked, avocado oil has fat and calories. So I'm not sure how they get it to be fat-free and 0 calories. Well, you know how they do it? There's a legal loophole that says if a serving size is less than 1/4 gram, they could round everything down to 1/2 gram. We see what the serving size is. It's 1/4 gram. So is that less than 1/2 gram? So they get to make all those numbers 0. Now I want to put this in perspective for you, because not everybody knows what 1/4 gram is. Not everybody went to college in the 60s. So, and I didn't either, but I heard. So I want to show you what 1/4 gram is. Everybody know this. This is a medicine cup. This is 1 ounce. So if you allow me to round off, that's about 30 grams. So if I want to show you 1/4 gram, I have to fill this up and then split it up amongst 119 others. You know what I would be left with? I didn't. So I actually did the experiment. I bought 120 of these. I filled one up, and then I divided it amongst the other 119. And by the time I was done, you know what I was left with? There wasn't even a drop. There wasn't even a droplet. There wasn't even enough for a mist. So I had to estimate. So I estimated it to be about a molecule. Now you may think that's misleading that they make serving size 1/4 gram, which is a molecule, but they're allowed to do it, but they have to tell you how many seconds to spray to get it out. Now, has anybody ever seen that? It says 1/4 of a second. 1/4 of a second. How do you do that? You can't do it. Actually, you can do it. Let me show you how. Just leave the lid on and wave it over food like this and say like a blessing or a prayer over it. So now I'm just kidding. But, you know, the problem with this is, you know how most people use it, right? They go like this. And if you say, hey, wait a second, should you be doing that? They say, no, look, it says for fat-free cooking, there's no calories, there's no fat, there's no saturated fat, there's nothing. So is that a problem? You better believe it. That's a problem. So have you ever seen this? I can't believe it's not butter. Well, you want to see what I can't believe about it? Look at this. It says no fat, no calories per serving, no trans fat. And when you look at the label, everything's a zero again. So now I know that's a problem because when you look at the ingredients, it says soybean oil and sweet cream buttermilk. Now, the last I checked my nutrition books, soybean oil and sweet cream buttermilk have calories and calories from fat. So how do they get away with it? Serving size is 1/5 of a gram, even less than the other one. Now, I was doing this presentation one time, and at the end, this woman came up to me and she says, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? She says, I believe all these numbers. I said, uh-oh. And she said, so I figure, why putz around with this little spritzer? I just take the top off and I pour this all over my food. I keep a stack of these at home in my refrigerator. I said, I think we found the problem. Now, I also don't think she's the only one who did that. I think there's a problem with these issues. They're very misleading. So how did they fool you? They use tiny serving sizes to round down numbers to zero. What's the result of this after 35 plus years? Americans, including our children, are now heavier than ever. 30% of us are overweight, 42% of us are obese, 72% of us are overweight or obese. The New England Journal of Medicine said that about a year ago, they said they're projecting that by 2030, this is going to hit 50%. And if you look, it looks like we're in a race to get there. I don't think that's a good thing. And I think a lot of these products contribute. So have you been fooled? You bet. So let's go shopping. And I'm going to do all the math, thumbs up or thumbs down. We're going to look at about a dozen products, okay? So I think this is really new. And I'm always excited about finding new products. So this one says made good vanilla flavor cookies. And it says nut-free organic, USDA organic, and gluten-free. And I don't know if you could see this here, but it says contains nutrients from vegetables. And I saw that and I said, you know, I eat a lot of vegetables and I like vegetables, but I like cookies a whole lot more. And if I could get all that's in those from eating cookies, that's a tough decision. So, and if you look on the back, it says it's certified organic, non-GMO, made with whole grain, certified vegan, kosher, gluten-free, contains nutrients from vegetables, and a dedicated peanut and tree-free facility. What do you think? Sounds good. But what does rule number 1 say? Turn it over. Check the nutrition facts label and ingredient list. So it's 160 cookies. You could look on the chart. I'll do the math. 1.6 times 2 is 3.2. We should find no more than 3 grams of fat, and there's 9. So that's 3 times my limit of my leeway. So very high in fat. Sodium should be no more than 160. It's low. And the added sugar should be no more than 3.2 either, or rounded down to 3. It's got 9 grams of sugar. 3 times the fat, 3 times the sugar. It's okay in the sodium. Let's read the ingredients. So it's got a flour blend of oat flour, brown rice, potato, ground chia seeds. Then it has cane sugar. Then it has palm fruit oil, which is palm fruit oil, which is very high in saturated fat. And it's got more sunflower oil, it's got baking soda, and it's got these extracts from vegetables. So it's very high in calories. It's very high in fat. It's very high in added sugars. It has palm oil, which is saturated fat. Is this good? No. And just to give you the full numbers, it's 51% fat, 23% saturated fat, and 23% added sugars. And just to put this in perspective, the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association says we should limit this for the day to no more than 5-6%. That's 23%. And between 23% added sugars and 51% fat, let's add them together, 74% of the calories are fat and sugar, oil and sugar. Doesn't pass. Okay, next, So Delicious, dairy-free, 100 calories, non-GMO. Does anybody believe this? Never. Oh, and non-GMO, I did the non-GMO. Turn it over, it's 100 calories. So this math is easy. What's 2% of 100? 2. So the fat should be no more than 2 grams. The sugar should be no more than 2 grams. The fat is 4 grams. It's twice my upper limit. The sodium, okay, the sodium makes it, it's under 100. The added sugars are 7. The limit should be 4. It's almost double. So let's read the ingredients. It's got a non-dairy frozen dessert, almond milk, filtered water, almonds. Then it's cane sugar, then coconut oil, then more sugar, then an isolate of pea protein, not a big fan of that, some gums and thickeners. Then the wafer, the cookie, is made from wheat flour. That's not white flour. So, and then it has palm oil. So it's got saturated fat, refined grains, and it's got added sugars. It's 36% fat, 27% saturated fat, and 28% added sugars. If you add together the sugars and the fat, it's 64% fat and sugar. The majority of the calories are fat and sugar. Sorry. Next, plant-based, 12 grams of protein, real seafood taste, flaky white fish texture, good source of protein. And if you blow this up, it says non-GMO, vegan approved. Now, when something says plant-based, what do you think that implies? A, that it's made mostly or all from plants. But doesn't that imply healthy in some way? Isn't that the core of the plant-based movement? Health? Okay, anyway, anybody believe this? Turn it over. It's 220 calories. 2% is 4.4, so it shouldn't be more than like 4.5. It's 11 grams. It's almost 3 times the fat. The sodium is 460. It's almost 2.5 times. It's over twice the sodium. Maybe that's where it gets the real fish flavor from. And then no added sugars. And we read the ingredients. Let's read these. Now remember, we're looking for whole foods with no refined sugars, flour, saturated fat. First ingredient is water. Next ingredient is wheat flour, not even whole wheat flour. Then it has a protein blend, pea protein isolate, soy protein concentrate, chickpea flour, fava protein, lentil protein, soy protein isolate, navy bean powder. So except for the chickpea flour, I mean, that's just isolates and extracts. I have a concern of us getting in too much of these isolated proteins and generally recommend avoiding them. They've been shown that they can raise IGF-1 if you get in enough of these, and IGF-1 has been related, that may be related to certain cancers. So I avoid that. Okay, sunflower oil, cornstarch, natural flavors, methyl cellulose, yeast, sugar. There's no food in this. Outside of the chickpea flour, maybe the navy bean powder, this is just fat and salt. I mean, protein and salt. Doesn't make my guidelines. Okay, we've all heard of this one. Plant-based patties. 35% less saturated fat, new meatier taste, non-GMOs. Does anybody believe this? Ooh, 20 grams of plant protein. No soy, no gluten. No, never, ever. Turn it over. It's 230 calories. 2% is 4.6, round off to 4.5. It's got 14 grams. That's about 3 times the fat of my upper limit. Sodium is 390. That's about 1.5 times the sodium limit. It doesn't have any sugars, but let's read the ingredients. It's got water, pea protein again, more isolates, expeller pressed canola oil, so oil. It's got coconut oil, so that's going to be saturated fat. So let's look at the numbers. 55% of the calories are fat, 20% saturated fat. I don't think that's a health food. Next, Daya. Dairy, soy, and gluten-free, good source of calcium, non-GMO, certified plant-based, deliciously dairy-free. Does anybody believe this? No. Turn it over. 60 calories, 2% is 1.2. The fat is 5. That's like 4 times the fat. All right. The sodium is 170. That's like 3 times the sodium, but it doesn't have any added sugars. And it's got coconut oil, safflower oil, potato starch, and pea protein. So let's look at the numbers on this. It's 75% fat, 60% saturated fat, way over the guideline. Last one, a couple more. 100% whole food plant-based meal, certified plantricious. I think that one means healthy. Non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free. Does anybody believe this? No, never ever. Turn it over. 570 calories. Well, I guess on my chart, you could say this is off the chart. 570 calories. So 2% would be 11.4. It's got 25 grams. That's quite a bit of fat. So it's way over my 20%. We'll get to saturated fat in a minute. The sodium is 540. It makes the 1-to-1, but you know, if you eat 2 or 3 of these in a day of this, that's a lot of sodium. So 1-to-1 is for things you're not going to eat a lot of. And then it says added sugars, none. Now let me show you something here. The saturated fat, 14 grams. The American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology recommend we limit our intake of saturated fat to no more than 5 to 6% of our calories in a day. If you then calculate that on somebody who's taking in 2,000 or 2,500 calories a day, that's the maximum amount of grams of saturated fat they should have in a day. It's 11 to 14 grams. That's 14. That's the maximum of saturated fat per a day in a burger, in a serving of this dish. What if you had 2 servings? Now, when you have situations like that, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying if you're eating this regularly, that's going to add up. So I think we could do better. I think we could do better than the maximum amount recommended in a serving. And the reason, it's got coconut. Okay. Now I know what you're thinking. Jeff, is there anything out there that meets your guidelines other than romaine lettuce? Well, you ever seen this? Shredded wheat, non-GMO, verified, whole grain, heart healthy, and 100% whole grain. Does anybody believe that? Never, ever. Turn it over. 170 calories, 2% is 3.4. Fat is under it. It's 1 gram. So it made the fat. Sodium is 0. So it made the sodium. Added sugars are 0. So it made the added sugars. And the only ingredient is whole grain wheat. So did this make it? Look at that happy guy. Okay, what about this one? Ezekiel bread, sprouted 100% whole grain, the original flourless, low glycemic, complete protein, no trans fat, organic, low glycemic. Does anybody believe this? Never ever. Turn it over, 80 calories. 2% is 1.6. It has none, so it makes the fat. Sodium is under 80, so it makes the sodium, and there's no added sugars. So it's done great. And you read the ingredients, we got sprouted wheat, raisins, sprouted barley, sprouted millet. That could be considered a sweetener, but it made the sugars. Sprouted lentils, sprouted soybeans, sprouted spelt, fresh yeast. It makes it. It makes it. Look at that happy guy. Thin stackers. It says gluten-free, whole grain, organic brown rice, basil, and you need a magnifying glass. Non-GMO, whole grain, gluten-free. Does anybody believe that? Never ever. Turn it over. 110 calories, 2%. 1% is 1.1, double it, 2.2. the fat is less than a gram. So it made the fat, sodium's under 65, so it made it, and the 0 grams added sugars. And let's look at the ingredients: brown rice, sea salt, margarine, basil, organic, thyme, savory sage, organic. So it's perfect. It made it. And let me tell you something. I actually bought these. And you see it says 6 servings here per container. Well, I got 9 servings out of the box. And you know how I did that? When I was done with the crackers, I ate the box. It tasted exactly the same. And I got 6 more grams of fiber that way. Just kidding. Look at that happy guy. Okay, Plant Strong, organic engine 2, 100% plant-based, no added sugar, lightly salted, oil-free. Says 180 milligrams of sodium, USDA organic, non-GMO, less sodium, and a happy vegan face. Now I know Rip. He's a good friend of mine. I think a lot of us know Rip, right? But remember the rules. So think carefully when I ask you this next question. Does anybody believe this? No, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it is. Well, my name's not on anything. I don't care whose name is on it. You always have to check. So let's see, 180 calories, 2% is 3.6. It has 1, so it made the fat easily. The sodium makes it 1 to 1, 180, which, by the way, I believe Plant Strong Foods uses these guidelines with a little leeway in them. We'll have to check with Rep. Added sugars, there's none, so it makes that. And let's look at, there's a lot of ingredients, but let's look at them and just see. It's corn, tomatoes, tomato juice, onions, black beans, kidney beans, navy beans, red bell peppers, tomato paste. It's whole foods. That's what we should see in the ingredient. So Rip, thumbs up. You get the happy guy. Okay, look at this one, Cascadian Farms, 8 grams of fiber, 6 grams of protein, no added sauce or seasoning, USDA organic. Does anybody believe this? Never. Turn it over. Calories are 120, 2% is 2.4. Did it make it? Easily. Sodium, is it under 85, under 120? Easily. And the added sugars, are they less than 2.4? Yes. And the ingredients are brown rice, corn, black beans, pepper, and salt, and it made the sodium. This is a whole food plant-based meal in a bag. It's 24 ounces. They have a couple varieties. These would be wonderful to keep on hand in your freezer. Look at that happy face. Last but not least, and this is the test. There was a test. I don't know if you know that. Cedars, original hummus, fat and oil-free, gluten-free, non-GMO, 0 fat, 0 oil, 100% tasty. Does anybody believe that? No. Turn it over. This is the little label. On small packages, they sometimes allow this mini label, but it has to have all the information. So 25 calories, 1% is 0.25, 2% would be 0.5. Total fat is 0, made it. Sodium is 105, it's just over 4 to 1. No added sugars, and the ingredients are chickpea salt, garlic, citric acid, cumin, guar gum. Here's the test. What do you think? It's done really good. The sodium's a little high, 4 to 1. Well, you're going to run into a lot of products like this, and this is where you're going to have to make decisions and think about it a little. The closer something comes to the guidelines or below it, the better it is, the more of it would be okay. The more something's over the guidelines or way past it, that you would need to be very careful with. It's not a black and white rule, you got to see. So are you okay with a little extra sodium? And this is more of a condiment that you're using with some vegetable slices and stuff? Or is this a main course on some bread that's going to be high in sodium too? So you got to think about it. So I can't always give you the answer. I could tell you what I would do. And for me, as a condiment more, this would be fine. I'm not going to put slabs of it on bread and eat this. In summary, focus your diet on unprocessed whole natural foods, fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, starchy vegetables, and beans. That's the health food. That's the superfood. Fill your basket, your home, and your body with these foods. Limit packaged and processed foods. If you're going to leave the produce aisle and go out to the rest of the store, be careful. Remember rule number 1, never ever believe anything on the front of any package, ever. Be careful, it's very tricky. Always check the nutrition facts label. Keep the calories from fat under 20%. We do that by limiting grams of fat to 2%. Sodium, 1-to-1 ratio. Added sugars, no more than 10% of calories. And we do it by limiting grams of sugar to 2% of calories. Read the ingredients. Avoid the unhealthy fats. Choose whole grain. Thank you very much.
Well, I guess, one of the first questions was, there was a lot of discussion of unhealthy fats. What would be considered healthy fats?
Oh, good question. Okay, so there's only a small amount of what we call essential fats that you need in your diet. They're omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids, and you've heard bad things about omega-6s, but you do need to have some alpha-linoleic acid in your diet, as well as alpha-linolenic acid in your diet, and there's a ratio that we like to have more of the omega-3 fatty acids in our diet. Now, omega-3 fatty acids tend to be unstable, and they've been sort of taken out of the food supply. So they occur in things like greens. Fish are famous for that. We don't recommend fish for a lot of reasons, but we like for you to get your omega-3s from a tablespoon of ground flaxseed every day, or chia seeds. And it turns out that the alpha-linolenic acid, which is the omega-3, the healthy fat, it's the most common fat on the planet because it's in leaves. And we really should be eating a lot of leaves. So that's why we recommend green leafies all the time. And the problem with omega-3s is they tend to be unstable. And so the food manufacturers have removed those from the, here he is.
Hey.
Hey, Jeff, did your battery go dead or?
No, I don't know what happened. I think I could get on with the computer. I'm on my phone.
You're fine. You're fine. We can hear you fine. This is great.
Oh, okay, great.
I've been channeling you.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You should be good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. So
good.
we were just about, we were talking about omega-3s and omega-6s, and I was about to get to the part where I tell people you should try to eat food that can spoil, because because omega-3 fatty acids are the ones that go bad the quickest, and they're the ones that get taken out of the food supply. That doesn't mean we shouldn't eat them, just means we should eat things when they're fresh. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. And if we actually run analysis and eat a healthy diet and get in enough calories, eat the good foods, it's easy to do. And if somebody wanted a little insurance, they could easily throw on a tablespoon or so of ground flaxseed, and they easily got it, or chia seeds.
Right.
Sometimes people are worried, and my concern is they overdo it. They go, well, I'm having oatmeal for breakfast. I go, great. And I go, oh, and I'm putting on flaxseed and chia seed and walnuts, and I'm taking flax oil. I'm like, I think you're going after a mosquito with a shotgun.
Sure. Okay.
Because I don't think it's good to get excess of too much,
Of course. Absolutely. And in fact, if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you may not even have to worry about omega-3s, right?
Yeah, I've done the analysis, and it actually comes up okay. You got to choose the right foods, though.
Right. Right. Exactly. All right. Any other questions from our professor or medical student?
There's an interesting question from Teresa. Says, I'm a very healthy female, 5'2", 104 pounds, BMI of 19, eating healthy, regularly activity, physical activity, read labels. She has a question about 5 pounds of gut fat on my frame, and I'm worried it may not be heart healthy. She admits to a weakness of drinking 6 cups of coffee a day with vanilla creamer and a glass of wine a day. She's curious about how to get rid of that gut fat.
Well, I don't know. And it's hard to tell anybody what to do over Zoom that I don't know or meet, so I don't really do that. But it sounds to me like the 6 cups of coffee with creamer, which is, even if it's vegan creamers, they're usually really high in saturated fat. Right. So I'd start there and check with set up a consult or a call with somebody who's a professional in this. That's not, I just don't do individual stuff on Zoom like this.
Right, exactly. No, I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah. It sounds like she was actually answering her own question.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
When she admitted to the 6 cups of coffee with creamer and the wine. But yeah, so there's a great organization, Plant-Based Telehealth, licensed in all 50 states. You can give them a call if you want to have a medical consultation. Yeah, actually, Jeff, somebody was mentioning about the hummus. I noticed that question whizzing by and saying, I thought it had no fat in it, but then you said that garbanzo beans have 14% calories from fat. What's going on?
Yeah, 14% of calories. So, if your calories are, 10, you know what I mean? Their serving size is a tablespoon. So the 14% may get rounded down. So, and they do a lot of that in the labels. There's a lot of rounding down and averages and all that. And there's 5 or 6 different ways that the FDA accepts that a food company can come up with their calorie values.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could actually burn it in the calorie bomb, or they could use the Atwater values of 449. And that, if you ever do that on a label, it never works out. But it's 25 calories. So if you do the 14%, we're down below 0.5. So it's rounded down.
Right. I think
if
also,
you look on the cheat sheet, 25 calories, it's 0.5. They can round that down.
Right. Also, I think there's some confusion when we talk about oil-free is not the same as fat-free, because all food contains some fat.
Right.
That's supposed to. It's a whole food. It's got cells in it, and they all have all 3 macronutrients. Right. So, okay, Dr. Freeman, any other questions there?
Yeah, a question from Margaret Garriota. What is the issue with pea protein, or is it pea protein isolate?
Yeah, my concern was with these isolated proteins. When we're getting in too much of them, there's studies that have shown that too much of these isolated proteins, even plant ones, if you get in enough, could raise IGF-1. And high IGF-1 may be related to certain cancers. So I know when I was back with Pritikin, we did some studies on it. And so we took the isolated protein out of some of the studies, and IGFs went down. So.
I'm sorry, I think there was a question about what IGF is. Did you explain that?
I didn't. It's a growth hormone.
Right. So yeah, so it's a growth hormone that's associated with increasing certain types of cancers. And so you want to keep that low.
Thank you. Yeah. We should go on the road.
Absolutely. We are on the road. I'm having a good time here. Welcome to my kitchen.
Yeah.
What else? All right. So I know somebody was asking about how you calculate a healthy amount of fiber in packaged food.
That's a good question. And realize that if your product meets these guidelines, it probably has a healthy amount of fiber. But when you take the recommended amounts and you divide it through calories and all that, it comes to 2%. So it's almost like if I took that chart, my cheat sheet, and we have fat, sodium, the next thing you would see would be fiber and then sugar. And if you just use the 2% numbers, so for 100 calories, 2 grams of fiber, that would be minimum. I think that like a lot of plants, like beans, would have more than that. So I think 2 is the minimum. So let's say you're doing 1,500 calories and you average 2 grams, you're at 30. There's the bare minimum. And hopefully too many people aren't eating below 1,500. If you get to 2,000, 2%, right, you're at 40. If you get to 2,500, you're at 50. So you'll easily get 30 to 50 grams. You see what I'm saying, by doing 2% of the calories.
Right.
So whatever the number was for, fat and sugar, it's the same number for fiber.
Right. One of the things that comes up at our programs is the salt that people add to their food. And I always tell people that you should use fine grained salt as opposed to the fancy rock kind of Himalayan salt or whatever, because with that kind of salt, you end up probably just swallowing the grains and never even tasting it. So if you're going to use salt on your food, it should not be the fancy, expensive stuff. It should be very fine grain. What do you think about that?
Sounds like a good idea. And one of the things I tell people is, like, if you remember the picture of the salt shaker and everything.
Right.
So like, to limit it, to buy as many low sodium, no salt added products as possible. And we add it at the table, because when we're adding it and it sits on the top, when you put it in your mouth, it hits the taste buds and it tastes salty. So when you put a potato chip in your mouth, it tastes real salty. And you put a slice of bread in your mouth, it doesn't taste as salty. But the bread per serving has more salt. And the reason is it doesn't really hit the taste buds as easily. So, you know, your thing may be even like an extra step, you know, sprinkle it at the table and do, you know, I was not familiar with that, but it sounds like that could be a good thing.
I was actually running it by you because I made that up myself. So
Oh, I'll think about it and get back to you then.
okay, all right, very good.
Question about cocoa butter, that you didn't mention it as one of the things to avoid, and is that a saturated fat?
Yeah, it is. And I'm looking at my sheets now, because it's usually, it says palm kernel, coconut, and cocoa butter. So I'm surprised it's not on it. I must have opened up the wrong file. So everybody who's out there who could hear this, just write cocoa butter. It's about 50% saturated fat. I mean, there's some people say, well, it's mostly stearic acid, and that's more of a neutral fat, a neutral saturated fat, but that doesn't make it a healthy fat or saturated fat. So, you know, so I recommend avoiding it.
Okay, somebody put up the question about hummus again. So obviously they're not understanding. So the question is, how can hummus have 0% fat if it has chickpeas? Well, we never said that hummus has 0% fat, right?
The label did. I'm
label,
not saying that.
oh, okay.
The label did, because when you look at the sheet, it was 25 calories per serving, right? And there was other calories in there besides the hummus, which lowers the average percent fat. So calories is 25, grams of fat would be 0.5 or less, okay? Okay, so all it has to do is be 0.549 and they round down to 0.
Exactly. So just to reiterate, if the serving size contains less than half a gram of any particular nutrient, they can round that nutrient down to 0.
Yes, for most of them. When you get to higher calorie numbers, so for some nutrients, it raises to 1 could be rounded down.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So listen, just take some time and read the, you know, all the rules for the FDA label reading guides. It's worse than the IRS tax code.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Well, listen, it is now 9 o'clock, and I am so excited that we were able to have Jeff Novick join us, and our talented crew, and Dr. Friedman and Dan Nichols, and our talented interpreters, Angelina, and I can't see the other one right now. She disappeared. But anyway, Allison, there we go. So thank you all, and say goodnight. And thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
All right, take care. Good to see you. We hope to see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.